Welcome to Sage Women, the podcast for midlife ladies navigating perimenopause, menopause, and healthy aging. I'm Melanie White, and each week I talk with experts and women sharing real stories, practical insights, and smart tips to thrive through this stage of life and beyond. Today's episode is all about midlife identity. This is a fascinating topic, and I'm drawing on conversations I'm having with women in a coaching setting, in an organisational setting, and some of the narrative that's out there in the media about what identity is, why it's a thing at midlife, and what can we do to reclaim our identity. So stay tuned. It won't be a long episode, but I want to share some insights that I hope will be valuable for you. And if you're someone that's thinking about your own identity and who am I now, I want to give you some tips at the end to help you get clear on that. But let's start with a definition. I looked it up online, I Googled it, and I found this statement. It is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. So that's what identity is. And we have many different types of identities. We have a personal identity, a social identity. Some of those identities are fixed and some are fluid, but they're the things that help us to make sense of ourselves, of who we are and our experiences in the world. At its simplest, you could say that identity is based on the labels we apply to ourselves. So I could say, in my case, I'm a biologist, I'm a coach, I'm a step grandmother. These are labels that perhaps externally, the external world would say, okay, I know who you are and what you are. And when we apply a label to ourselves like that, then we tend to see these sense of qualifying traits about us, and we set expectations for how we live our lives, how we dress, how we act, and how we think. And those expectations are not just our expectations, but they're how the world treats us and responds to us. So what happens in midlife? Well, we're on a trajectory through our lives, and estrogen is helping us along with that. But when estrogen starts to decline and comes to a grounding halt around menopause, I think Lisa Mosconi might have described it as lifting the veil of estrogen. It's like a switch has flicked. That was my experience, at least. The reproductive years, all of that stuff is gone. And the way that you think and the way that you feel changes. I want to also at this point mention that at a cellular level, menopause has a huge energetic cost. It's a time of accelerated aging. We're aging 10 to 15 years in one or two. So the amount of energy required to go through that process is significant because it's a fundamental change physiologically, biologically, psychologically, emotionally. And because of that, all of the things that we've been doing up till now, all of the things that we expected of ourselves start to change. Suddenly we're exhausted. Suddenly we don't have the energy for people who are irritating anymore. Suddenly we won't tolerate any BS. And suddenly we think, do I really enjoy this job? Do I really want to spend time with those people? Do I really want to do those things? Then the question is, if not those things that I've always done, well, who am I now? And this is especially the case for women who have been heavily invested in achievement, in their careers, in their families, in giving to other people, possibly at the expense of themselves. Now, is that common? I'd say so. A lot of the women that I coach seem to have lost their sense of fun. They've forgotten how to do things for themselves. They don't have any hobbies. Instead, they're bearing the load of caring for other people, being the go-to person when things go wrong. Or they're in a leadership role and they have a broad range of responsibilities that take a lot of headspace. And let me tell you, when your time, energy, sanity, cognitive function is limited, you can only deal with so much. And the thing that often drops off is the time that you would previously spend on yourself. I do want to point out, though, that this is not a loss of capability. It's a temporary dip in capacity. I want to be really clear on this. There's only a couple of years that we go through symptoms, or most women will, where we have less capacity, less resourcefulness to get through things. It's not forever. It's a blip on the radar. And beyond that blip, when we get into postmenopause, a whole bunch of things change. Our brains rewire. We develop new senses of self and wisdom and yearnings to do things that are more meaningful. We start to be clearer on who we are and what we want. But this patch in the middle, I guess you could call it a midlife crisis. One of my clients calls it a renovation, or it could be a reinvention or a refurbishment. But what we're really doing is going, hey, everything I've ever known about myself has been disrupted by this menopause thing. My brain has changed. My hormones have changed. I don't think the same way that I used to. I'm having different experiences. And who am I now? And that is the hard question that women are struggling to answer. On top of that, I think some of those things are reinforced by our external world. We have our peer group, we have our colleagues at work, we have work and societal structures that have expectations of us and perhaps of the old version of us. So it can be a little bit confusing to think about, well, how would I like to be now? And how can I get everyone else to acknowledge and respect the person I'm becoming? It's quite a challenging time. We're seeking agency, empowerment, and in some cases, a bit more visibility to be acknowledged and valued for who we are now, not just what we've done for other people, but to acknowledge us as people for our strengths, our values, and what's important to us. If we haven't done that work, this time can be a little more challenging. But, let's talk about what we can do. And I suppose the first thing is, do we want to see this as a decline or do we want to see this as a peak? How would we like to view this transition? How would we like to reframe what we're going through as an opportunity rather than a cost? If we don't do this, I think the risk is that we go down this steady path of decline. And I think about watching my own mother reach menopause, get grey perms and wear beige clothes, including woolen pleated skirts. Sorry, Mum. If you're listening to this, do less socially, do less exercise, sit at home watching TV and wearing cardigans. Well, here I am wearing a cardigan right now, so who am I to talk? But you get the picture. We see these people in our lives as role models of how to behave, and that is only one option. I think that's what I'm trying to get across. We might have seen a certain way of aging modeled to us by our mothers or our grandmothers, but we don't have to follow their path. We can choose our own path at this time of life. And so the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is, in terms of strategies for change, of getting through this, is start to shift our mindset to become more positive. There are so many things that we can't control in life. Any of us can't control in life. So let's focus on what we can control and, more importantly, what we want to control, which is ourselves. That's really the only thing that we can control. We can control how we spend our time, what we plan to do, what we say no to, how we set boundaries. And so being really clear on that is important, to know who we are, but also what we are prepared to dedicate time to. It's almost like a time of mental decluttering, getting rid of anything that is negative or doesn't serve us and being really clear on how we would like to be going forward. Also, that comes down to daily work of catching ourselves in those unhelpful thought loops and saying, well, what's a better way of thinking about this? So it's a really good time to do that. One of the challenges that can come up, though, is that we are often really busy with lots of different things at this stage. And I heard a really great podcast the other day on the Diary of a CEO with somebody talking about a brain hemorrhage and the left and right sides of the brain. And she had lost all of the left logical thinking side and only had the right emotive side. And she said something very interesting, which was the fact that we spend so much time in that logical, intellectual thinking side of our brains, but we don't balance that with that being at one with the universe, being at one with nature, being calm, just existing side of things, the being side. So it's like we've got these doing things and these being things in our lives. And how can we spend less time doing and more time being? Getting that balance right is so important so that we can stay positive, not get bogged down in stress, and keep ourselves well resourced to handle difficult times. And so in talking about being a positive thinker, it's not just think positive, it's about developing habits that allow us to think positive and developing habits that tap into that other side of the brain that we perhaps don't use as much as we'd like to. That's why some women turn to mindfulness or meditation. Some use breathing apps or do breath work. Some people go walking in nature. But doing something that regulates your nervous system to calm down the sympathetic and improve the parasympathetic, the rest and digest system, that's really powerful. It means stepping away from the desk, stepping away from your family, from your commitments, and doing something for yourself that doesn't require thought or achievement or being productive. It can feel like a really foreign concept if you've been working hard all of your life or really been achievement oriented. I've been through this myself. Sitting and reading a book, drinking a cup of tea, what a waste of time. I could be doing something productive. I've had to learn how to reframe that. And I've also learned about myself that sitting still is really hard. And for me, moving meditation is better. Walking on the beach, just tapping into all the sights and sounds. You might be like me or different, but the point I'm making is finding time to engage that parasympathetic side, that being at one with nature or the universe or whatever it is, that being calm and just being a person, just being, not having to do something is so important to give your brain a rest and your body a break. The other thing I think is really important is rediscovering passions and hobbies. I was coaching someone this morning and she said, I've always wanted to do knitting. Fantastic. What a great time to start. I spoke to someone else recently and she said, I really love cooking, but I don't seem to have the time. There are things that we can do for ourselves that nourish our souls, that give us a different kind of identity apart from mother or senior leader or head of the netball group or whatever else we are into the outside world. And if I think about my own identity and the things I've cultivated for myself, I've cultivated belly dancing, strength training, permaculture gardening, playing violin in an amateur orchestra, and being part of a craft group, among other things. I just think that we have so many other ways we can use our brains. And when we get into that flow state, that positive emotions, that it's being very present with the activity that you're doing, it's so engaging, but it also reminds us of what we're capable of and who we are outside of our traditional roles. There is so much opportunity to rediscover passions and hobbies at this age, to free up time to paint or garden or take photos or whatever it is that you love to do. And just be okay with that and know that you're developing skills and capabilities that are perhaps going to find you a more meaningful pursuit in life and a sense of who you are. The other thing that's so important is building a support network. If we look at the social determinants of well-being and we look at the role of support with other people and community, belonging and connection, it's so critical. One of the challenges in menopause is that we might feel like we want to withdraw from people. We've had enough of people. We need time for ourselves. Totally okay to do that. But where are the opportunities for us to be connected? What are the opportunities for us to be part of a group without being consumed or overwhelmed by the group? I was recently reading a New Scientist magazine on a plane somewhere, and they were talking about introverts, which is different from an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert, which is in the middle. The introvert is someone that doesn't feel the need to be part of any sort of group or community. They can go in and out of those groups, but they don't need to be an active, busy part of that group or to identify with a group. I kind of feel a little bit that way myself, and I know others do too. So what do those kinds of people do? Or what does an introvert do? I think there are opportunities to do things that have some social engagement without too much commitment, like joining an exercise class or a knitting group or a craft group or a singing group where you can come together for a thing, but not have to be part of the organising committee or driving it forward or anything like that. Other people like to volunteer or be part of a church or really immerse themselves in a community. So I think when we're talking about belonging, support, connection, and community, it's really important that you tap into what your needs are, what you have the capacity for, and what your natural tendencies are. Knowing yourself in that way means that you'll be able to get social support and connection, but in a way that's not overwhelming, in a way that's inspiring and that you look forward to doing and energizing. I think another area too that we must mention is health and well-being. Because we have so many changes in midlife, one, we might have to adapt to the things that we always thought we would be doing. Like perhaps you can't do boot camp anymore because your body won't take it. Perhaps you can't drink so much alcohol anymore. Maybe you can't tolerate spicy food or fatty food anymore. So it's worth going internally a little bit and reviewing all of those things and saying, what are my needs now? How do I go with sugar? How do I go with alcohol? How big of a meal can I actually eat and still get a good night's sleep? What time do I have to have dinner? What sort of exercise really nourishes my body? Being clear on the changes in your body and your changing needs at this time is so important so that you don't burn yourself out, so that you continue to fuel your body in the way that it needs it, to combat stress and to combat inflammation. That is so important at this age because inflammation is a driver of symptoms. And so if you identify, coming back to identity, if you identify as an exerciser or as a person who's a runner, maybe you still can be a runner, but it takes a different form. Maybe you still can be an exerciser, but it looks a little different than it used to. Working with a professional can help you to really get clear on what suits your body now, what your immediate needs are, what your risks are with your health and potential chronic diseases that are in the family, and making adjustments with that in mind. So really doing that renovation on your health and well-being, revising, reviewing, upgrading everything in your life to support you, and make sure it's stuff that you can still handle and still have the capability and capacity to do. I think there's also another opportunity here, and that is to set new goals. It could be for your career, for your personal development, or for your health and well-being. But having something to work toward is so important. It gives us something to strive for. It gives us a sense of meaning and purpose. And it might be an opportunity to use some of the skills that we've accrued through our lives to give back. Setting goals is really important. And so that could be an outcome that you'd like to achieve in a year, but there could be also new behaviors that you want to develop or new learning that you have, new skills that you want to acquire, like learning a language or learning how to do bookkeeping or whatever it is that tickles your fancy. I guess my point is this: if I conclude this episode on identity and say, yes, we come to midlife with an identity based on many years of work and external interactions and expectations. But the disruption that we experience, the lifting of that veil of estrogen, changes so many things, including the way we view ourselves and the way the world views us. So let's harness that. Let's take the opportunity to do something for ourselves, to rethink who we are, to redefine ourselves, to say, I'd like to be more authentically me. And I'm going to look forward to discovering who that is. I hope that's been a bit thought-provoking for you. I am so passionate about this topic because we can go in a number of different directions. And if you want to get your hair permed and go grey and wear woolen clothing and sit in front of the TV, that's totally up to you. But if you'd like something different for yourself, that's also available. You might have to get help to get there, but the very least is carving out some time to reflect on what you want and make a plan to get it. I hope that's been helpful. Thank you for listening to this different episode. I look forward to seeing you next time.